Emma Carter never believed in first impressions. They were for dreamers, and she was anything but that. At 29, she had mastered the art of control: sleek hair, sharp heels, perfectly timed coffee breaks, and an even sharper reputation at the marketing agency that fed on New York's constant hunger for more. Her phone buzzed with campaigns, meetings, deals, not feelings. Feelings were messy, and mess never looked good on her. That evening, the city pulsed around her like a restless heart, the kind that never stopped beating, even when you wanted silence. Emma adjusted her blazer as she entered the glass doors of L'Avenue, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. She wasn't here for work, and that, more than anything, made her uncomfortable. Her best friend, Olivia, had begged her. Just one dinner, Em. He's different. Different is usually code for disappointing, Emma had replied. But she had shown up anyway, because saying no sometimes felt lonelier than saying yes. The maitre d' recognized her instantly. Emma Carter, the woman who always looked like she belonged somewhere important. She followed him through the hum of conversation and champagne clinks until he stopped by a corner table near the window. "Your guest will be right with you," he said with a polite smile. She glanced at the second chair, empty, expectant. Her reflection in the window looked confident, maybe even a little bored. She scrolled through her phone, replying to emails that didn't need replying to. Minutes passed. Then a shadow fell across the table. Emma. She looked up. It wasn't who she expected. No tailored suit. No watch that screamed investment banking. No sleek haircut that tried too hard. Instead, he wore a simple white shirt, the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and jeans that had actually seen the world outside boardrooms. His hair was slightly tousled, his eyes calm, too calm. For a second, she thought he might be lost. "Yes? Can I help you?" He smiled. "I'm Liam, Olivia's friend." Emma blinked. "You're the date." His brow arched slightly, amused by the disbelief in her tone. "That's what they tell me." He sat down, unbothered by her surprise. There was no flash of nerves, no attempt to impress. Just quiet confidence, like he didn't need her approval to breathe. "I think there's been a mistake," she said, trying to keep her voice polite. "I was told that I'd be taller, richer, wearing a suit." He interrupted, eyes glinting with a trace of mischief. She froze. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He leaned back, casual, his gaze steady. It wasn't arrogant, it was knowing. And that, more than anything, unsettled her. The waiter arrived, breaking the tension. Liam ordered for them both. Something simple, something confident. Emma wanted to protest, but somehow, she didn't. "So," she began, crossing one leg over the other. "What do you do, Liam?" "Fly." She frowned. "Fly? Like for work?" He nodded. "Something like that." "Pilot," she guessed. He smiled but didn't answer. "You could say I spend a lot of time above the noise." She tilted her head. "That's cryptic." "Maybe," he said, "but it's peaceful up there." Emma sipped her wine, studying him. There was a stillness about him, like he belonged to a slower world. It irritated her, how unaffected he was. No pretense, no performance. Just presence. It felt dangerous. "Do you always let other people order for you?" he asked suddenly, eyes flicking toward her plate. "Only when I don't care enough to argue," she said, smirking. He chuckled softly. "Then you must not care much about this dinner." "Maybe I don't." "Good," he said. "Makes it easier." She blinked. "Easier for what?" "To be honest." He leaned forward, voice low but steady. "You walked in here expecting a type. The man who matches your world. Money, ambition, control. You were ready to measure him before the first word. And now you're trying to figure out why I don't fit." Her breath caught. "You sound very sure of yourself." "I'm not," he said simply. "I'm just not trying to prove anything." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. Something shifted. A tiny fracture in her armor. The food arrived, fragrant and perfect, but neither of them really ate. Their conversation turned lighter. Travel, music, New York winters. He had stories, strange and vivid ones, told like someone who'd lived a dozen lives quietly. She found herself laughing, actually laughing, which hadn't happened on a date in years. But the control always tried to creep back. When he made her laugh too much, she'd sip her drink, look away. When his gaze lingered, she'd reach for her phone. Still, she couldn't help wondering. Who was this man who didn't chase, didn't boast, didn't need? By the time the check arrived, Emma had made up her mind. "Well," she said, slipping her card onto the table. Thank you for the unexpected evening. He didn't move to stop her, didn't ask for her number. Just stood, slow and deliberate. You're leaving already? I have an early meeting, she lied. Of course. He smiled, not buying it. At least let me walk you out. They stepped into the crisp night air. The city glittered, all glass, ambition, and late-night taxis. She reached for her phone, already half-typing a goodbye text to Olivia. That's when he said it. I'll drive you home, Liam offered. Unless you're afraid of flying. She turned, brow furrowing. Flying? He nodded toward the street. Come on. I'll show you. Before she could argue, he started walking. Something about the calmness in his stride, the quiet certainty, made her follow. Past the line of cars, past the valet, down toward the private terminal that bordered the edge of the Hudson. And then she saw it. A sleek, silver aircraft, minimalist, beautiful, gleaming under the city lights. Her heart skipped. You're joking. Not usually, he said, stepping closer, the wind catching his shirt. Emma stood frozen. The night hummed around them, river breeze, distant sirens, the hum of something impossible. He looked at her, eyes steady. You wanted someone on your level, he said softly. Maybe you just didn't realize the sky was part of it. She exhaled, speechless. Come on, he added, his tone light, but his gaze daring. One drink. Above the clouds. You can leave whenever you want. She hesitated. Logic screamed no. But her pulse, that traitor, whispered yes. Her heels clicked against the tarmac as she took a step forward. Then another. The door of the jet opened with a soft hiss, warm light spilling out. And as she climbed inside, Emma realized she had no idea who this man really was. Only that he'd just rewritten the rules she'd lived by. Inside the jet, everything felt surreal. Soft leather seats, golden dim light, and the faint hum of engines waiting to breathe. Emma stood still for a moment, her heels planted on the polished floor, trying to process what she was doing. This wasn't her. She didn't make spontaneous choices. She didn't follow strangers onto private planes in the middle of the night. And yet, here she was. Liam watched her, that same calm expression on his face. No smirk, no arrogance. Just quiet curiosity, like he was letting her set the rhythm. Still planning to run? He asked, pouring champagne into 2 crystal glasses. Still thinking about it, she said, crossing her arms. You know this is insane. He handed her a glass. That's what makes it interesting. She took it, hesitating only for a heartbeat before sipping. The taste was smooth, sharp, and far too expensive for what she thought a nobody could afford. Nice jet, she said, glancing around. Do you often kidnap women this way? His laugh was low, genuine. Only when they look like they need saving. She rolled her eyes. I don't need saving. I know, he said, leaning back in his seat. That's what makes you worth flying with. The engines came alive, soft at first, then powerful, a deep vibration that settled into her bones. Through the wide windows, the city lights began to blur, melting into a sea of gold and blue as they rose. For the first time in a long while, Emma didn't feel grounded. She felt free. The skyline of New York stretched below them, sparkling like a constellation that belonged only to them. She pressed her hand to the window, watching the river curl through the city like silver ribbon. Liam studied her quietly, sipping his drink. You work too hard, he said finally. She turned, half smiling. You barely know me. I know your eyes haven't stopped scanning since you walked in that restaurant. You notice details because that's your armor. People like you don't rest. They analyze, plan, and control. She raised an eyebrow. And people like you? He met her gaze steadily. We let go. The air between them tightened, not with words, but with something deeper. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the engines. Tell me, Liam, she said after a moment, what do you really do? Because this, she gestured around, isn't just a hobby. He smiled faintly. I own a few planes, and the sky that comes with them. Vague, she said. Intentionally, I assume. He tilted his head. You'll figure it out. You seem good at that. His tone wasn't teasing. It was admiring, like he saw the sharpness she hid from everyone else. And for some reason, that unnerved her more than any confession could. The plane climbed higher. The city vanished beneath clouds, replaced by the endless dark velvet of the night sky. Stars spilled across it like they'd been scattered just for them. Emma sank into the seat opposite him, crossing her legs, eyes still fixed outside. You know what's funny? I don't even know where we're going. Does it matter? It does to me. He smiled slightly. Then I'll make it simple. East. East, she repeated. That's not a destination. It is, he said, his gaze catching hers. If you're brave enough to follow it. She looked away, but his eyes lingered, calm, certain, impossible to ignore. The quiet hum of the cabin wrapped around them like a secret. For a while, neither spoke. They didn't need to. He studied her, every small shift in her posture, the way her fingers played with the rim of the glass, the flicker of something unspoken in her expression. And she hated how easily he saw through her. But she couldn't look away. He broke the silence first. What made you stop believing in love? She almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love's overrated. It's just marketing for emotions people can't handle alone. Interesting, he said. For someone who sells feelings for a living. She narrowed her eyes. You did your research. I listened, he said simply. You talk with conviction when you're pretending not to care. That one hit deeper than she expected. She looked at him, ready to fire back, but his gaze wasn't mocking. It was gentle, understanding, almost. Maybe you've just been loving the wrong way, he added softly. Or the wrong people. He nodded once. That too. Silence again. Not empty. Charged. The kind that hums right under the skin. Too close. Too real. Then a sound. The faint click of the seatbelt light. He stood, stepped toward the small galley, poured them another round. Do you ever do something just because it feels right? He asked. I usually prefer to think before doing. Maybe thinking's overrated, he said, offering her another glass. Try feeling instead. His voice was low, steady, a command disguised as an invitation. She took the glass. Their fingers brushed, a spark that sent her pulse off rhythm. She drew in a sharp breath, pretending not to notice. You really think you can get away with this mysterious act forever? She asked. I don't need forever, he said. Just tonight. Her heart stumbled. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. A man who didn't chase moments. He created them. The clouds parted beneath them, revealing the faint glow of the Atlantic. Where are we really going? She whispered. Liam's eyes flicked toward the window, then back to her. Paris, he said finally. If you're brave enough to stay on board. Her lips parted. You're serious. As gravity. She set the glass down, searching his face for any trace of humor, but there was none. Just quiet invitation. Paris. The city of love, impulsiveness, poetry, everything she claimed not to believe in. Her logical mind screamed no. But her pulse, steady, urgent, whispered yes. What happens if I say yes? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Then you stop running from what you feel and start flying toward it. The plane tilted slightly, a gentle curve through clouds that glowed pale silver under the moonlight. Emma stared out the window, at the world falling away, at the endless sky ahead. Then she looked back at him and smiled. A small, reckless, terrifying smile. Fine, she said. Paris. Liam's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They softened, warmed, deepened with quiet triumph. Good, he murmured. Fasten your seatbelt. As the engines roared and the stars above tilted into motion, Emma Carter, the woman who controlled everything, finally let go. For the first time in years, she didn't know where she was going. And she had never felt more alive. The night sky slowly bled into dawn by the time the jet began its descent. Paris shimmered beneath the clouds, a sea of soft lights, narrow streets, and silver rooftops. The Eiffel Tower stood like a promise in the distance, its crown of gold piercing the morning haze. Emma pressed her forehead to the glass, half dazed, half awake. Somewhere between New York and here, reality had dissolved. Her phone had lost signal hours ago, and for once, she hadn't cared. She turned to Liam, who sat across from her, reading quietly. His sleeves were still rolled up, his shirt slightly undone. There was no sign of exhaustion on his face. Only that same calm steadiness, like flying across oceans, was as casual as breathing. You're impossible, she said softly. He looked up. You're still here. She smirked. Don't remind me. The plane touched down like a whisper, and within minutes they were gliding through the quiet streets of Paris in a black car. The world outside was still asleep. Bakeries lighting ovens, fog clinging to cobblestones, the same glimmering under a faint pink sky. Emma watched it all from the window, the scent of rain and foreign air filling her chest. It was too beautiful, too unreal. Do you do this often? She asked finally. Pick someone up, fly them across the world, and make them question their sanity. Liam smiled faintly. Only when it's worth it. And how do you decide that? He turned his head toward her. Instinct. She wanted to laugh, but couldn't. There was something about the way he said it that made her believe him. The car stopped outside a quiet cafe on Rue de Montessuie, one of those Parisian corners where time seemed to slow. Small tables, fresh flowers, the aroma of coffee and bread spilling into the air. They took a table outside, the city still stretching awake around them. Liam ordered in fluent French, and Emma found herself watching him with reluctant fascination. He wasn't showing off. He was simply at ease everywhere. So what's next? She asked, stirring her coffee. Do you have a checklist for spontaneous romantic gestures? Only one rule, he said. Never plan them. She smiled despite herself. You're dangerous, you know that? He leaned in slightly, voice low. You've said that before. Because it's true. Their eyes locked. The street noise faded, leaving only the clink of cups and a tension that buzzed between them. Light, magnetic, inevitable. Liam broke it first, his tone suddenly softer. You look different here. How so? Lighter, he said simply. Like New York doesn't have you in a chokehold. Emma laughed quietly, but his words hit too close. In this morning air, she could feel it. The version of herself she didn't have time to be. The one who wasn't rushing deadlines or proving something. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stood, extending his hand. Come with me. She raised an eyebrow. Where? He only smiled. You'll see. They walked for what felt like hours, through narrow alleys, along the Seine, through markets filled with flowers and warm croissants. He didn't rush, didn't fill the silence. He just walked beside her, occasionally glancing over as if to make sure she was still there. When the sun began to fall, they reached the steps near Trocadero. From there, the Eiffel Tower loomed in full, golden, glittering, larger than life. Emma inhaled sharply. God, it's different in person. Everything real is, Liam said quietly. She turned to him. You sound like someone who's spent too much time thinking. He smiled faintly. No, just flying. They sat on the steps, the city below humming softly. The lights began to flicker on, one by one, until the whole tower blazed to life. The crowd gasped. Emma didn't. She was too busy watching him. The golden glow danced across his face, catching in his eyes. He looked at her, really looked, and in that moment, she forgot every rule she'd ever made for herself. Her breath caught. The space between them felt impossibly small. But he didn't touch her. He didn't move. He simply smiled, almost knowingly, and said, See? It's better when you stop planning. The words sank deep, quiet as a confession. Later, they walked again, down streets that smelled of rain and jasmine, past shuttered boutiques and glowing street lamps. Her heels echoed softly against the stones, his footsteps steady beside hers. At some point, they stopped talking altogether. The silence was full, not empty, the kind that happens when two people finally stop pretending they're not connected. By midnight, they reached his suite overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white orchids, and a view that could make anyone believe in something bigger. Emma stood by the glass, watching the tower pulse gold in the distance. Liam poured 2 glasses of wine and joined her. Still think this is insane? He asked. Completely, she said, smiling. But I'm starting to like it. Good. Their glasses touched, a soft, musical sound that filled the quiet. He was close now, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of his cologne, cedar and something darker. The kind of scent that lingers. You don't talk much about yourself, she said finally. Why is that? He looked out the window. Because people usually decide who I am before I open my mouth. And what do you want me to decide? He turned back to her, his gaze steady, unreadable. Nothing. I just want you to look. Something in the way he said it, the softness, the certainty, made her chest tighten. She wanted to ask more, but words felt unnecessary. Instead, she set her glass down. The air between them changed, thicker, slower. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel his breath against her skin. Her heart raced. Every part of her screamed to pull back, to protect herself. But she didn't move. His hand brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, fingertips lingering just long enough to make her forget the world outside. Emma, he murmured, you don't have to be in control right now. She looked up, eyes meeting his, steady, unguarded. And for the first time, she didn't fight it. He didn't kiss her, not yet. He just stood there, the distance between them alive with everything unsaid. When morning light finally slipped through the curtains, she woke to the smell of coffee and quiet music. Liam was in the kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, moving with that same effortless calm. He turned as she sat up, his smile slow and genuine. "I didn't want this to end last night," he said. She froze, heart fluttering. Who says it has to? The way he looked at her then, like the entire city was just background to her existence, made her realize something terrifying. She wasn't just intrigued anymore. She was falling. When Emma returned to New York, everything felt different. The skyline was the same, jagged, alive, relentless, but she wasn't. Her coworkers noticed it first. The woman who usually stormed through the office with coffee in one hand and purpose in the other now lingered by windows, smiling at nothing. Her emails were shorter, her tone lighter. Even Olivia raised an eyebrow. "So," she said, swirling her latte, "you disappeared to Paris with a guy you met once?" Emma just shrugged. "I needed a break." "A break? Or a man with a jet?" Emma laughed, but she didn't answer. There was no way to explain what had happened, how one night in Paris had shifted her center of gravity. It wasn't the places. It was him, Liam Hayes. He hadn't called immediately when she returned. No texts, no plans, but she felt him everywhere, like the city itself carried his energy. The sound of engines overhead, the low hum of the river, the silver streaks of airplanes cutting through the dawn sky. And just when she convinced herself it was over, that it had been a beautiful, impossible chapter, he appeared. Literally. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She was in the middle of a pitch meeting, her team gathered around a long glass table, all eyes on her slides. She was sharp, focused, in command, until she saw him. Through the transparent wall of the conference room, Liam stood outside, casual in a dark jacket, holding a bouquet of white tulips and wearing that same infuriatingly calm smile. Her words trailed off. "Emma," her assistant whispered. "Are you okay?" She blinked, pulled herself together. "Yes, continue without me." When she stepped out, he handed her the flowers. "For the woman who tries to outthink the sky." Her lips parted. "What are you doing here? Stealing you for a day?" She folded her arms, pretending not to melt. "You can't just show up at my office." "I can if I ask nicely." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Come on, Emma. One day? No emails. No deadlines." Her resistance faltered. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in his tone, or maybe it was the way the world seemed to slow when he looked at her. She sighed. "If my boss calls, I'm blaming you." He smiled. "Deal." They left the city behind, his car cutting through the late afternoon rush, heading north until skyscrapers gave way to open roads and soft green hills. The air changed, clean and ocean-scented. By sunset, they reached it. A coastal estate tucked among cliffs and cypress trees, with the Atlantic stretching endless before it. "This is your place?" she asked, stepping out of the car. "One of them," he said simply. "Of course it is." But there was no arrogance in his voice, just ease, the kind of ease that came from not needing to impress anyone. They walked down a narrow path to a terrace overlooking the water. The wind tugged at her hair, the sun burned gold against the horizon, and the sound of waves filled the silence. Emma breathed in deeply, eyes closing. "I can't remember the last time I stopped long enough to actually feel." "That's the point," he said softly. They stayed outside until the sky turned violet. Then he led her inside, through tall glass doors into a house that was all light and simplicity. No extravagance, just warmth. A fire flickered in the stone hearth. "Wine?" he asked. "Always," she said. He poured 2 glasses, and they sat by the window, watching the ocean darken into shadow. "Tell me something real," he said suddenly. She turned to him. "Real? Something you don't say to anyone." She hesitated. "I don't like needing people," she admitted finally. "It makes me feel weak." He nodded. "You're not weak for needing. You're weak for pretending you don't." Her gaze met his, sharp and vulnerable at once. "And you? What do you pretend?" He thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "That flying keeps me from falling." She laughed softly. "That's poetic." "It's true," he said quietly. "I've built a life above the clouds. It's easy not to feel too much when you're never grounded." Their eyes held. The quiet stretched, full of things that didn't need to be said. And then, she moved closer. Or maybe he did. It didn't matter. The space between them dissolved. His hand brushed against hers, tentative but sure. "Emma," he whispered. She didn't let him finish. Their lips met, slow, searching, inevitable. It wasn't fireworks or chaos. It was deeper, steadier, like two storms finally finding calm in each other. When they finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against his. "I don't do this," she breathed. "I don't lose control." He smiled. "Then maybe you never really had it." The night unfolded like a slow-burning melody. They talked, laughed, argued playfully, kissed again. Time blurred. The world outside ceased to exist. Hours later, she stood by the window wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the moonlit sea. Liam came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist. "Do you ever stop thinking?" he murmured against her neck. "Sometimes," she whispered. "When you're near." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Then I'll stay near." Her breath hitched. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel the weight of that promise. No grand declarations, just quiet truth. In the dim reflection of the glass, she saw them, two silhouettes against the night, holding on like the world was finally still. But as the fire burned low, a flicker of fear crept in. Because for the first time, she wasn't just intrigued or fascinated. She was in danger, not from him, but from herself. Emma Carter, the woman who planned everything, had fallen into something she couldn't plan. And as Liam's heartbeat pressed steady against her back, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to find her way out. Weeks passed, and what had started as a spark turned into a rhythm. Emma and Liam became the story everyone whispered about in New York, the marketing star and the mysterious man with the planes. But to them, none of that mattered. The mornings were still hers. Coffee, quick meetings, 100 decisions before noon. The nights were his. The sound of engines, jazz on the terrace, the quiet pulse of a life that didn't need explaining. Sometimes he'd wait for her outside her building, leaning against a car that probably cost more than her apartment, hands in pockets, calm as ever. Other times he'd just text, look up, and she'd step to her window to see his jet carving a line across the evening sky. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like oxygen. One evening, she joined him at a charity gala, her world and his colliding for the first time. The ballroom glittered with crystal and laughter, the air heavy with perfume and money. Everyone wanted to know who Liam Hayes really was, and everyone pretended not to ask. Emma slipped her hand into his as they entered. "Smile," he whispered. "They're all watching." "I don't do watched," she muttered. He smiled back. "You do tonight." They moved through the crowd like a quiet current, her in a backless black gown, him in a perfectly cut tux that somehow still looked effortless. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered her name like gossip and envy mixed together. But when he looked at her, everything else blurred. In that gaze, she wasn't a headline. She was just Emma. They danced once, slowly. She rested her head against his shoulder, the scent of his cologne wrapping around her like a memory she didn't want to end. "You hate events like this," she said softly. "I hate pretending," he corrected. "Not the part where you're in my arms." She smiled against his chest. "You always say things like that so calmly. It's easier when they're true." For a moment, she forgot the room, the stairs, the constant hum of power. There was only the music, low, steady, and theirs. The next day, photos of them flooded the internet. Emma Carter seen with aviation mogul Liam Hayes, the mystery man who stole New York's most untouchable woman. Olivia called immediately. "So he's that Liam Hayes? You didn't mention the part where he owns half the sky." Emma rolled her eyes. "Because it doesn't matter." "Oh, it matters. You're dating a headline." "I'm dating a man," Emma said quietly. "And I don't care what his last name buys." But that night, alone in her apartment, she stared out the window at the city lights and wondered if she was lying to herself. His world was limitless. Hers was built on structure. Could something born in motion survive the stillness of reality? A week later, he showed up again, this time without warning, without even a message. He found her sitting on a park bench near the river, laptop open, mind buried in deadlines. "Working again?" he asked. She didn't even look up. "Some of us have to." He chuckled. "Then steal an hour from them. They'll never notice." She sighed, snapping the laptop shut. "You really don't take no for an answer, do you?" "Not when I know yes would make you happier." He offered his hand. "Come on." Let's disappear. She gave him a look, but took it anyway. They drove north again, to the coast. The same house, the same ocean, but this time, it felt different. Familiar. The wind was warm, the air heavy with salt and wildflowers. Inside, he'd prepared everything. Candles, dinner, music soft enough to be felt more than heard. You've been planning this, she said. He shook his head. I've been waiting for it. Dinner turned into laughter, laughter into a slow dance by the window. She moved easily in his arms now. No tension, no calculation. When he kissed her this time, there was no hesitation. Just the quiet certainty of two people who finally stopped pretending the world had rules. Hours later, they lay tangled in sheets and moonlight. The fire burned low, the sea murmured below the cliffs. Liam, she whispered, tracing a line across his chest. What are we doing? He opened his eyes, lazy, content. Living. You make it sound simple. It is, if you stop fighting it. She looked away. You know I can't just vanish from my life. I've worked too hard to get here. He reached up, touching her face. And that's why I like you. You built your world with your own hands. I just want to make sure you remember it's okay to live inside it too. She smiled, but her throat tightened. You make it too easy to forget what I'm afraid of. Then let me remind you of what you're not. He kissed her forehead, slow and certain. You're not replaceable. You're not alone. And you're not stuck. The words landed somewhere deep, past every defense she'd built. Days blurred into one another. They flew to Miami for a night, to Aspen for sunrise. He never told her plans in advance. He just said, pack light. And somehow it was always worth it. But what surprised her most wasn't the luxury. It was the calm. With him, she didn't have to fill silence. Didn't have to perform success. She could just be. And in return, he never tried to cage her. He never demanded, never measured. His power came from giving freedom, not taking it. That was what terrified her most. Because she was starting to want that kind of freedom permanently. One evening, he took her hand across a candlelit table. I have something for you, he said. She frowned. If it's a plane, I'm walking out. He laughed. Not yet. He slid a small envelope toward her. Inside, a single boarding pass. Destination, unknown. Her eyes lifted to his. What is this? A surprise, he said. A reminder that some journeys don't start until you stop planning. She stared at the ticket, heart beating faster. And where does it lead? He smiled. You'll know when we're in the air. So, he paused, eyes locking on hers. Are you ready to see where we're going next? Her pulse skipped. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was everything she'd been running from. But as she looked at him, the man who had somehow become both her storm and her stillness, Emma knew the answer before she spoke it. Yes, she said quietly. Show me. The sky above Italy was the color of melted gold and soft sapphire. Emma had never seen anything like it. The coast stretched endlessly, waves curling against cliffs that seemed carved by eternity itself. She stood on the terrace of the small villa Liam had bought, bare feet against warm stone, hair tousled by the breeze. It smelled of salt, citrus trees, and faint lavender. Behind her, Liam leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't need to speak. She already knew he was watching, assessing, waiting. This is, she began, searching for words. It's perfect. He walked up behind her, sliding his hands around her waist. Not perfect, he murmured, just ours. She leaned back into him, resting her cheek against his chest. The rhythm of his heartbeat was steady, grounding her in a way no city skyline or luxury hotel ever could. I could stay here forever, she whispered. Then do, he said simply. It wasn't a declaration. It was an invitation. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider it. A week, a month, no phone, no work, no deadlines. Just them, the ocean, and the sky. He had arranged everything so simply, so effortlessly. Candles on the terrace, a small table for two, fresh bread and olives, and wine chilled to perfection. Every detail mattered, not to impress her, but to let her feel she could breathe. That evening, they walked down to the water. The waves licked at the shore, cool and silvery under the moonlight. Liam's hand brushed hers, tentative at first, then holding firmly. Emma, he said, stopping to face her. I didn't fly you across the world to make you chase me. I wanted to show you that. She tilted her head, heart hammering. That what? That I can be someone for you. he said softly. Someone steady. Someone real. Her breath caught. I thought you didn't need anyone. I didn't, he admitted. Not until I met you. It was quiet, intimate, as if the world had paused to witness them. The waves, the breeze, the stars, all seemed to bow to this fragile moment. Then, slowly, he drew her close. His lips met hers, not urgent, not desperate, but deliberate. Every kiss carried the months they had spent together. The laughter, the danger, the flight, the city lights, the night in Paris, the warmth of the ocean in New York. It wasn't just passion. It was recognition. A bond that had formed not by accident, but by choice. They stayed like that for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, letting the world fade away. When they finally moved back inside, Liam poured 2 glasses of wine and raised his to her. To us, he said. Emma smiled, clinking her glass to his. To flying without maps, she said. He laughed softly. Exactly that. And then, after a pause, he added quietly, almost as if confessing a secret. You thought I was nobody, but I just wanted to be someone for you. Her chest tightened. That simple statement, stripped of pretense, carried more weight than any grand gesture ever could. I think you've already been someone, she whispered. From the moment I stepped onto that plane. He pulled her close again, their foreheads touching. And now, she said, closing her eyes, I don't want to ever let go. Days passed like a dream. They rose with the sun, walked along the cliffs, cooked together, swam in the warm Mediterranean water, and watched the skies change every hour. Emma realized she no longer cared about control, deadlines, or appearances. With Liam, the world was wide open, infinite, and hers to explore. One evening, he surprised her. He handed her a small headset and pointed to the terrace. Want to see something? Curious, she put it on. Then she heard the low roar of engines. Looking up, she saw a silver glint against the twilight sky, Liam's private jet, descending gracefully. Her eyes widened. You did it again. He grinned. Some things never change. She laughed, running her fingers through her hair. And some things I'll never get used to. Good, he said, stepping closer. Because I don't plan on stopping. That night, under the stars, they lay on the terrace. Liam held her close, whispering small observations about constellations, the moon, and the quiet power of the sea. Emma realized she had never felt so alive. She wasn't just experiencing passion. She was experiencing life. The freedom to feel, to trust, to surrender. You belong here, he murmured, voice low, brushing hair from her face. Only with you, she replied. They kissed again, long and unhurried. The ocean whispered below, the wind played with her hair, and above them, the sky stretched endlessly, vast, inviting, eternal. It was more than romance. It was a declaration. Before dawn, Liam woke her with a soft touch. We fly again soon, he said. But this time, no distractions. Just us, the sky, and whatever comes next. She smiled, resting her head on his chest. I think I'm ready. He kissed her forehead, holding her close. Good. Because the sky belongs to us. And for the first time, Emma believed it. Not because of wealth or power, not because of adventure, but because love, pure, unrelenting, and fearless, had found its way to her. The villa, the sea, the jet, the endless horizon, it all melted into one thing, them. Liam lifted his glass to the rising sun. To beginnings, he said. To us, Emma whispered back, smiling through the light. And then, above the glittering waves, his jet soared past, a silver streak against gold. Emma watched it, hand in his, heart in flight.